Hi, and welcome to the first module of the EPA Partnership Program. In this module, Module 1, we are going to learn how to read the test. Then we are going to interpret the test, and then we're going to learn how to deliver the test. So we're going to lay the foundation. I'm going to explain to you a little bit of the premises upon which this entire EPA behavior mapping tool is built, so that you also have a clearer understanding and some background. Now, let's start with the word potential. The objective, the goal of the EPA test is to unlock the potential of every person that we want to help. Be it a life coaching client, a business client, a marketing client, a career coaching client, mentoring client, whatever. We want to use this tool to unlock the potential. So first of all, we need to see what this potential means, right? So potential in the EPA world is that space within our character where change, growth, and improvements are possible. It's not about perfection, and it's not a fixed score that we either have or we don't have. Think of potential as an unused energy stored in a battery. That battery can be tapped into if we understand what charges it and what drains it. So with the EPA test, we are mapping where that potential lives and how it can be accessed in the context of work, relationships, personal growth, business growth, etc. To read the EPA test, you need to understand 3 layers of human behavior. Obviously, if you are in the coaching business for some time, you will have studied this, you already know this, you might even have your definitions for it. So let me share our definitions, okay? So the definitions that we use in the EPA world. First of all, temperament, our innate behavioral characteristics, so what we like to call our behavioral DNA. This is the foundation that we are born with. Then there is the character. The character is a result of how that temperament interacts with our environment. So this is where the patterns, the programs, the habits form and consolidate. And it is how we actually show up in the world. Then there is identity. And identity is the 3rd layer, and it's the layer of things that we identify with. And this can be roles, this can be archetypes, professional status. It's how we present ourselves to others, okay? A little bit of ego, if we want to use that word. So the EPA test gives you a window into all 3, but especially into how the middle layer, so the character, has been shaped by both nature and nurture. Throughout life, every experience and decision we make is like writing a line of code in our personal operating system. We don't just collect memories or experiences, we collect instructions for how to handle future situations. So just like a computer and its operating system, our behavior runs on this code, which is stored in our subconscious. The EPA test shows us which parts of the code are efficient already and which might need a little bit of debugging or troubleshooting or an update, okay? So it's, as always, it's like a mirror that we use to help our clients, because neuroscience tells us that about 40% of our daily actions are habits, automatic responses that we are not even conscious of or we don't consciously think about. And about 95% of our daily decisions happen at an unconscious level. That means that much of what people do is not deliberate. It's not intentional. It's driven by pre-programmed patterns. So I know that you are, as a coach, as a team leader, or as a consultant, might already have this information, but I just want to share and summarize what the premises of our reasonings and the paradigm that we use are. And EPA helps us see these patterns in action, okay? So let's have a look at let's dive into a little bit of this habits world. We all carry a reality model. The reality model is what we unconsciously believe to be true about the world. And this is our inner map of how things are. Okay, we are not aware of it, but it's there. It drives us. From this model, we develop reality programs. So a set of rules about how I should behave in different situations. These programs are like scripts, the code that we follow without even realizing it. So for example, if my reality model says that speaking up in a meeting is risky, my program might be stay quiet until someone speaks to you, okay? And then those programs, so the reality model feeds into the reality programs that then creates our habits. So these models and programs show up in our habits, the repeated, often automatic actions that make up most of our daily behavior. And when we read the EPA test, we are looking at the behavioral evidence of these invisible models and programs. You can't see the beliefs directly, but you can see the patterns that they produce day after day behind the actions that are mapped out clearly in front of you. Okay? So habits are the brain's way of saving energy. Once something becomes habitual, brain activity drops and we go on autopilot and the brain says, thank you, this is nice and easy, I can save my energy. And that's why you can drive home from work and not remember the turns you took, how many red lights you found, because your brain has outsourced that drive home program to a stored automatic pattern. So without habits, we would burn out from decision fatigue before noon. That's why it is so challenging to change habits, right? Because it requires a lot of energy. So the challenge is not all habits are efficient or aligned with our goals. And we need to start looking at which actions are inefficient and we need to start changing them. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into the habit cycle. Every habit follows a cycle, right? We have a trigger signal, something that tells our brain, okay, it's time to do this. This trigger can be internal, like feeling stressed, or external, like hearing a notification sound, someone calling, the phone ringing, an email arriving, okay? And it's kept alive by every habit is kept alive by the emotional reward, something that tells the brain, oh, this is nice. The brain says, okay, it's nice, let's do it again. Or that helped me avoid discomfort. The brain says, great, let's do it again. Rewards can be obvious, like pleasure from eating chocolate or an ice cream or a pizza or a burger. Or there can be more subtle, like feeling relief from ending an awkward silence, or feeling relief leaving a meeting that you didn't want to be into. So this loop, trigger, routine, reward, is the engine of habit formation, both good and bad. Understanding this cycle is key to knowing why certain behaviors keep showing up on the EPA test, even when the person consciously wants to change them. We have to go and change the routine, change the reward, change the reward, change the routine. But we will dive into this in the following lessons, and each lesson also has some exercises that I've used, that we use with our clients, and you can integrate them with all the great exercises that you probably already use with your clients. So the key elements of habits we said there are three. There are trigger signal, routine, and emotional reward. The triggers can be anything. It could be you wake up, you open your office, a client walks in, the phone rings, and they can be sensory, so a sound, a sight, a smell. They can be emotional. I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling relaxed. Or they can be situational. I'm in a meeting, I'm on a stage, I have to do an interview, Okay? Routines are the automatic actions that follow the trigger. Sometimes they're productive, like taking a deep breath before doing a presentation. Sometimes they're counterproductive, like interrupting and fidgeting when you are feeling impatient and agitated. Rewards can be physical pleasure, relief from pain, a sense of safety and familiarity. In fact, many unhelpful habits survive not because they feel good, but because they make us feel safe or in control. So I keep showing up to a meeting, and without speaking up in that meeting, that's not good for me, especially if I'm seeking a promotion or if I'm seeking to be seen, but it feels safe. I feel serene. And so I do it. I keep doing it, even if it doesn't work for me anymore. So this is why habits are hard to break, because they're wired into both our nervous system and into our emotional system. Most habits are unconscious. We're not deciding in the moment. We're reacting to cues based on old programming. So the EPA test lets us make those invisible routines visible so that we can help our clients update them if needed, where needed. This also means that because changing habits is so hard, and when we try to change a habit, the brain senses it as a potential threat to safety or comfort. Even positive change can feel unsafe because it takes us into unknown territory and the alarm bells go off. That's why people resist even beneficial changes. The old routine might not be working so well, but I know it. It is safe. The new, who knows? It might not work. I might feel worse. One way to help change stick is to deliberately link a strong positive trigger to the new habit, so the brain gets an immediate green light to proceed. We'll get into this later on. Another is to weaken the old habit by pairing it with a negative association. For example, visualizing the long-term cost of continuing some inefficient behavior. The brain is highly responsive to both attraction and aversion. So we can use both to support lasting change by showing the client that if they keep doing this, they might fall in a ditch. Whereas if they start doing this, they might start climbing up the mountain towards their desired goal. So let's get to know our EPA test. Okay, the EPA test is a behavioral mapping tool. It's not a psych evaluation. It's not an attitude evaluation. It doesn't measure who you are as a person, but it only shows us the habits that our clients have developed to handle life, work, relationships. It shows us where those habits that they've created and are holding on to are helping them and where they might be holding them back, okay? And it's based on the triune brain by Paul MacLean, okay, which gives us 3 major functions. I'm sure you know this. Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick overview. So MacLean stipulated that there are 3 brains within one brain, okay? And each segment is responsible for a specific function to help the individual. The evolved individual uses the triune brain synergistically, in synergy, okay? So the survival brain is the most primitive, the oldest, and it asks, am I safe here? Is this safe for me? And it governs instinctive reactions and creates security and safety through fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The emotional brain, which is the mammalian brain, okay, asks, am I loved in this situation, in this context? Am I seen? Am I loved? Am I valued? So it shapes connections. It shapes bonding and how we respond emotionally to others. The executive brain, the newest brain, asks, what can I learn? And it handles logical processes. It handles planning. It handles strategy. It handles higher reasoning. So the EPA behaviors, the EPA test, and the traits that we have on the test are influenced by all three, obviously, but we often default to one under stress. So for example, someone may default to their survival brain in a conflict, focusing only on self-protection, on winning the conflict, on eliminating the enemy. Another may operate from their emotional brain, prioritizing harmony over facts, prioritizing the relationship over principles or justice. So I may come down to having a lot of compromises because I need to protect our relationship instead of my principles and my truths, okay? Or they may jump into executive brain mode, analyzing but not connecting emotionally. So I become cold under stress. I become isolated, and I analyze and I discern and I recognize what I need to do in a matter-of-fact kind of way. So recognizing where your client, to which brain your client shifts into by default under stress is extremely helpful, because we can help by seeing where the default mechanism is. We can help our client integrate, okay, from the very first session. Also, the test taps into Gurdjieff's model of man 1, 2, and 3. In the early 20th century, Gurdjieff described a model of the human being built around three main centers or intelligences. We have the intellectual center, which thinks and analyzes, more logical and analytical, rational. We have the emotional center, which feels and reacts. And we have the physical or moving center, which acts and executes. So his insight was that each person has a dominant center, the one that they tend to use first when responding to life. And that much of our inefficiency comes from using the wrong center for the task. In the EPA test, you see echoes of this model. For example, someone might try to solve a relationship conflict purely from the intellectual center, but without the emotional center engagement. The result will be cold, will be distant, and the other party, who might be driven by the emotional center, will feel unhappy and unsatisfied in this approach. Or they may approach strategic planning of a project from the emotional center, but without the intellectual center to help structure and strategize, they will miss a bunch of practical steps. So reading the EPA test and interpreting it is a way to learn to see which center is driving behavior and whether that's serving the person in their role or holding them back. Okay. What does the test measure? The test measures habits. We've already said that. It's not about who the person is, but it's how they behave. So it's not identity. It's not personality labels. You might have a very inefficient time management habit, but an extremely effective relationship management habit. So every person has high potential. Sometimes it's the operating system that needs a little bit of updating, a little bit of troubleshooting, and that's what we're here to learn to do. Okay? This is an important premise. The test is based on 19 traits, 11 traits and 8 sub-traits. And you must not fall into the trap that the goal is to have a client with all 100s. That's not the goal. The goal is not to have all traits at 100. Some traits are most useful in moderation. And some traits, when they are low, they're exactly perfect. You will see in a few lessons, you will see all of this. The real value is in becoming conscious of unconscious behavior, so we can use them intentionally. and we can start shifting things that don't work for us. Relationships or personal issues or business projects. So the value is in becoming conscious of unconscious behaviors. This is why the graph is so powerful, because you show it to your client and you make the invisible visible to them. So many times in all these years that I have delivered the test to hundreds and hundreds of business owners and team leaders and solopreneurs and HR managers, and a typical response is, God, it's like you are a clairvoyant and you've read my entire life. And in fact, the test is based on 220 questions that your client answers. We only look at this graph, and through this graph, we have the honor of letting them see what they're not seeing before they come to us. So it is an eye-opening, awakening experience, extremely powerful. How can you use it? Well, you can use it for personal growth and performance improvement. So life coaching, sports coaching. You can use it for better teamwork and relationships. If you're a team leader or a business owner with their own team, you can use it for staff selection and internal assessment. So the whole recruiting process can be built around this tool to reduce the error of hiring the wrong person by 80%. These are our statistics. You can use it for business growth, for managerial development. If you have a line of managers that you need to help grow, well, let's see what their starting point is, and then let's help them grow. You can use it for sales and commercial skills. If you have a sales team and you want the team members to perform better in sales, let's have a look at their sales indicators. Their communication, sales, and leadership indicators are crucial to let you know if someone is predisposed and could work in a sales role. Okay, so wherever there are people, the EPA test can offer insight and can help. We're coming to the end of this first lesson, probably the longest lesson, because I had so much to tell you and I wanted to really introduce you to all the premising concepts of this new paradigm, the EPA world. And remember that potential evolves when individuals evolve. And that happens in an evolving environment, which we have to create. So the EPA test is just a snapshot of your client's today's behavior. But with awareness and guidance, your client's picture can shift, unlocking more of the battery that we talked about earlier in slide 2. Okay, so thank you. It's been great. I'll see you in the next lesson.